Joining us from Columbia, South Carolina is Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator, thank you very much for being with us tonight here on C-SPAN.
My pleasure, Steve.
You mentioned a few months ago when we sat down to talk with you, and again tonight, that you were building a movement. 3.5 months into your campaign, are you where you thought you would be?
No, we're far ahead of where I thought we would be. The turnouts that we have seen all over this country, including a conservative state like South Carolina, what we're seeing today is far beyond what I thought possible in the 3.5 months that we've been in the campaign so far. But it's not only that. Last month, Steve, we did a digital organizing effort. We had 3,700 locations in 50 states in America, bringing out over 100,000 people. Up to this point, we have received individual contributions from some 400,000 Americans, averaging $31.20. So in terms of the kind of support that we are seeing in so many ways, we are far beyond where I thought we would be after 3.5 months.
Well, your speech tonight lighting up our Twitter universe, and a lot of people want to weigh in and ask you questions. I'm going to ask our viewers and listeners, when you get through, keep your comments brief so we can give the senator a chance to respond. We'll begin with Irene, joining us on our line for Democrats, San Antonio, Texas. Irene, go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you so much. And C-SPAN, thank you so much for airing Bernie's rally. I felt like I had a front row seat, which was amazing. I'm in San Antonio, Texas. I don't know if he's going to make it down here. I have been following him for years. I'm a huge supporter. I can't even tell you how ecstatic I was when he said he was running. He already had me at, I'm running. But right now I think his campaign is, if you build it, they will come, and they will keep coming. I speak to a lot of people. I campaign with the Democrats here, but I'm not having a lot of Bern feelings in San Antonio yet, but it's going to happen. It's the Bern-mentum.
We'll get a response. Thank you, Irene.
Well, I think there is a lot of momentum, and I think the reason for that is that we are talking about issues that are in fact on the hearts and minds of the American people, which most politicians and media do not talk about. You know, Steve, nobody thinks that it is right that the top 1/10 of 1% in this country own almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%, and that almost all new wealth and income is going to the top 1%. People don't think that that's what America or our economy is supposed to be about. And when you raise issues like that and you come up with concrete ideas, I think people all over this country, in Texas and elsewhere, are shaking their heads and saying, yeah, we need to go beyond establishment politics and establishment economics.
Another fan saying, Bernie Sanders, a really smart guy. I wish we could get more of this more often. Are you sensing that on the campaign trail?
I absolutely am. I mean, Steve, I mean, you and I chatted a couple of months ago, and never in my wildest imagination would I believe that we would have thousands of people coming out to rallies today in Greenville, South Carolina, or here in Columbia, South Carolina. Nobody would have told me that we'd have 28,000 people coming out to Portland, Oregon, or 27,000 out to Los Angeles. So it's not only the size of the crowds, it is the enthusiasm. And it kind of makes me a little bit nervous because, you know, as I say all the time, and as I said tonight, this is not about me. I cannot do it alone. What we need is a political movement of millions of people who are getting involved in the political process in a way that we have not done in the past. If we continue to have low voter turnouts, if people are not paying attention to the major issues facing us, right-wing Republicans will continue to win. But if we can bring people together around a progressive agenda, I think we can transform what goes on in this country and win this election.
Dee is next from Rockford, Illinois. Our line for Republicans. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm a Sanders. Under the Obama administration right now, I'm currently a cancer patient receiving care through the insurance that was actually given to me, not one that I actually wanted. If you were to be elected, because honestly, I'm a Republican all my life, and I am frustrated. I'm frustrated with the choices that we have right now as far as healthcare is concerned. I'm fighting for my life, but it took me over a month just to get one of my chemo treatments because of the, because of the insurance that I'm on through the Obama administration. What do you plan on doing differently if you were to be elected?
What we should understand, and I fear that not every American does understand this, we are the only major, wealthy, industrialized country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all of our people as a right. The system that we have is way, way, way out of touch with where the rest of the world is. So what I will fight for is a Medicare for all. Medicare is a pretty good system. We can improve it, and we should expand it to all people. And when you do that, not only will you provide quality health care to all of our people, you will get rid of the profiteering of the insurance companies and the drug companies. Drug companies are charging us by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. And when we do that, we can provide quality care for all of our people at significantly less per capita than we are currently spending. So that's my goal in terms of health care.
Deborah is joining us from Minneapolis. Independent Line, good evening.
No, I don't know what I am, independent or Democrat or whatever. But it's also very confusing. But the one thing I do know, and I never know how to say it quite right, but on a religious principle, God himself appointed us to all give 10% of what he gave to us. If I only have $700 a month coming in, $70 goes where it has to go. And he works with that much, and it works. If everybody paid the same percent, that means the people who have a lot of money paid the same percent as we do, the little ones, we would have nothing to complain about. So the money that we do gather, when 10% of our income is all used toward the one thing that's needed, which is all the things he talked about, then there ought to be enough money. That's all I have to say.
Well, Deborah, let me approach the issue from a slightly different perspective. Number one, we are the wealthiest country in the history of the world, not only in the world today, but in the history of the world. Problem is, most people don't feel that because almost all of the wealth and much of the income is going to the top 1%. What we have seen in the last 30 years in this country is a massive transfer of wealth, which has gone from the middle class and working families, whose percentage of wealth has shrunk, to the top 1/10 of 1%, whose percentage of wealth that they own has almost doubled. And I think that if we address that issue and redistribute the wealth from the top 1/10 of 1% back to the middle class, we can do enormous things in this country. We've got to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, in my view. We've got to make public colleges and universities tuition free. We need health care for all of our people. Our child care system is a disaster. So there's a lot of work to be done, and we can do that. We're not a poor country, but the problem is that so few have so much and so many have so little. That is what has got to change.
Senator, let me follow up with this from Jesse, who sent in this tweet saying that I've tried to refinance my private school loans, but no luck. How will you convince the banks to help people like me?
It's not a question of convincing the banks. It's a question of changing the law. What Jesse is talking about is the absurdity of folks today who have student debt. We have over $1 trillion in student debt from millions of Americans who are paying 6, 8, 10%. They cannot, by law, refinance. They're stuck with that indefinitely. The legislation that I have offered will, in fact, allow Jesse to refinance. Right now, you can refinance your home, your mortgage, at 2, 3, 4%, depending on where you live. And yet people are stuck with 8, 10, 12% interest rates on their student debt. That's pretty crazy. And then in addition to that, the government, which now holds much of that debt, is making huge profits on those high interest rates. Allow people to refinance, and the government profiteering on student debt. We can lower interest rates very, very significantly. And that's what my legislation does.
Chuck is next, joining us from Benton, Washington. Our guest is Senator Bernie Sanders, who's wrapped up a rally in Columbia, South Carolina. And of course, the entire event is on our website at cspan.org. Chuck, go ahead, please.
Senator Sanders, I'm honored. I would like to say that we watched it tonight, my wife and my 18-year-old daughter, and we were very moved. I was a supporter, but they are believers now. And I want to say I was born in the Eisenhower administration, and I look back at that time and I see a great country that invested in infrastructure and made great strides socially and was a people of peace. And I think we were great at that time, and you are restoring that, and I thank you, sir.
Well, Chuck, thank you very, very much. And I think you make a very good point. Dwight David Eisenhower, president from 1952 to 1960, was a moderate Republican. This guy was not some kind of radical, and yet he understood that it was important to rebuild our infrastructure. Under the Eisenhower administration, we created the interstate highway system, and we did a lot more. And what has happened, sadly, since that time, as a result of the huge amounts of money spent by the Koch brothers and other right-wing extremists, the Republican Party has long forgotten its Eisenhower heritage. Somebody with an Eisenhower point of view would be laughed out of the Republican Party today, and that's pretty sad. So the Republican Party has moved very, very far to the right. Democratic Party, to who I caucus with, and there are some great people in the Democratic Party, but we've got to be honest and understand that money influences the Democrats as well. And what we need, I think, is a system which not only overturns this disastrous Citizens United, but I don't think it's asking too much to have a government that represents the vast majority of the people, the middle class, the working people, the low-income people, and not just wealthy campaign contributors. And that's what we are fighting for, Chuck. Steve, maybe one more question, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Let's go to Doug from Boulder, Colorado, Republican line.
Hello, Senator Sanders. My
Hey, Doug.
concern is I'm a Republican, and I think the brand has been destroyed since Nixon, and George Bush W didn't do it any good either. And I voted for Obama and feel like I was burned from all the promises. He made a lot of promises that struck near and dear to my heart, and none of them really happened. I mean, there's a lot of manipulation going on. And then here I am. I'm looking for someone that I can back that speaks clearly with few platitudes. And I'm getting a lot of platitudes when you watch network television. And actually, when you watch all the politicians, that's all you get is platitudes. And I'm very interested in what you have to say, but I have a very negative opinion of politics. I think the Democrats want money and don't know where it goes, and don't invest what it's required to make sure it goes to the right place. And the Republicans...
I'm having a little bit of difficulty hearing you. Talk a little bit closer into the phone, please.
Okay. Did you get my point on the Democrats?
Doug, let me just jump in because it's been a long night for the Senate. Are you basically saying you're disillusioned with both political parties? Is that a fair statement?
Yes, very much so.
Let me get Senator Sanders to respond to that point.
I think the caller represents the vast majority of the American people. Steve, we just had an election last November. 63% of the American people didn't vote. 80% of young people didn't vote. I think people are looking at Washington, and they are very disillusioned. They're saying, look, I'm hurting. I'm working longer hours for low wages. I can't afford health care. I'm worried about climate change. Billionaires are buying the political system. Who in Washington is representing me? And I think millions of people are saying, nobody is representing me. To heck with the whole thing. I'm not going to vote. I understand that. And let me be very clear, and I say this in every speech that I give. Bernie Sanders, if elected president, cannot do it all. Can't do it all. I'm not making any promises to you that I'm going to do all these things. Because, to be truthful with you, the powers of Wall Street, the powers of the large campaign donors, the powers of corporate America, the impact of corporate media is so great that no president, no matter how well-intentioned, can do it all. And that is why I believe we need a mass, grassroots political movement in this country where people begin to stand together. And when that happens, and when millions of people speak in a voice that says to the billionaires, sorry, you can't have it all. You are going to have to start paying your fair share of taxes. You're not going to continue sending our jobs to China. When people begin to say, yes, we're going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, we are going to make college affordable for all of our people. When people get involved, there's nothing that we can't accomplish. So I don't want to tell anybody that, hey, vote for me, I got all the problems solved. Not the case. What I'm trying to do in this campaign is not just get elected president, but to build a movement that could take on the very, very powerful special interests which today control Washington.
And let me, if I could, just jump in with one final question. Some news of the day from the Associated Press where Vice President Joe Biden is reportedly gaming out his own way of potentially entering the race. If he were to enter the race, how would that change the dynamics of this Democratic campaign?
I honestly don't know. I've known Joe Biden for many years. I like him. I respect him, a very decent guy. All I can say is if Joe Biden gets into the race, I will do everything that I can, as somebody, by the way, who has never run a negative political ad in his life, I will do everything I can to debate Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, anybody else on the real issues facing the American people. How it ultimately plays out politically, your guess is as good as mine.
This is the second of 4 events. How are you holding up, by the way?
We're doing great. We got 2 more tomorrow, then we're going to New Hampshire, then I'm going to take a few days off.
And we'll be covering you also in mid-September when you speak at Liberty University. Why that location?
Well, it is very easy to talk to an audience that is sympathetic to you. And those are the people who come out to our rallies. It is very different to talk to a very, very conservative university whose views on many of the major issues are very different than mine. But I think in America, it is a good idea for people involved in politics to start talking to folks who may not agree with them on every issue. And the issues that I will raise at Liberty University are issues of morality, something that the university is concerned about, the morality of having so much income and wealth inequality, the morality of having the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country on earth, the morality of why it is that we're the only major country that doesn't guarantee health care to all people. So that is the kind of discussion that I hope to engender by going to Liberty University.
Senator Bernie Sanders in Columbia, South Carolina, thank you very much for sticking around after your rally tonight, and we'll see you on the campaign trail.
Okay. Steve, thank you very much. Take care.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.